Welcome to episode 86.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Ready to take a vacay, but you just don't have the time to plan? Let the agents at 3D Travel Company pamper you and take care of all the little details. Find us at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know we have launched a Patreon page. You can find us at www.patreon.com/whodidthatvoice. What is Patreon, you say? Well, it's a lot like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign that allows you to help support us on a monthly basis. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show and earn amazing perks. Help us out today and join the Who Did That Voice family in a new way. Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today I am extremely excited to be sharing our 86th episode with you. I can't believe how much we have grown. And firstly, I want to start off with a big thank you to each and every one of my listeners. Whether you're a long-time listener or a first-time listener, thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Today's interview is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be an interview/tribute episode where we are speaking with one voice actor about his life and career and sharing the life and career of his father, who is sadly no longer with us, but you probably know him whether you know that or not, because of the prolific amount of work that our special guest father has done. Today's special guest is Fred Fries, the son of Paul Fries. And you may not know Paul's name, you may not know the name Paul Fries, but I am sure that you know him one way or another. One of these sample audio clips is bound to jog your memory one way or another. I'm sure of it. So the very first thing we're going to cover today is Paul Fries is the voice of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. And then years later, when they brought it to Disney World, he did some additional audio dialogue for that ride, as it was a longer version in Walt Disney World. So here's some behind the scenes clips of him being recorded as the ghost host, and then a little bit with the music as well. I hope you enjoy.
KU 6905.
When hinges creak in doorless chambers, and strange and frightening sounds echo through the halls, whenever candlelights flicker, where the air is deathly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight.
This next clip is of Paul Fries doing the voice of KARR from Knight Rider. Now, this character was originally voiced by Peter Cullen, who is beloved to many of us as Optimus Prime, but in the last episode called Kit vs. KARR, Paul Fries voiced KARR. Here's that clip.
You're a car. Cars don't talk.
Correct. I am not a car. I am the Knight Automated Roving Robot, the first in a bold new experiment. You may call me KARR.
If you're a Disney fan like I am, then this is a character you may have grown up with like I did on a lot of the Disney sing-along videos. Ludwig von Drake was one of my absolute favorite characters growing up, and you guessed it, Paul did that voice too. Here's a clip.
Let me introduce myself. How do you do? I am Professor Ludwig von Drake, and today we are going to discuss the wonderful world of color.
If you're a fan of H.G. Wells the novelist, or a fan of time travel or sci-fi, then this movie is something that just might be right up your alley. Back in 1960, the film The Time Machine released, starring Rod Taylor and Alan Young. In the show, Rod Taylor builds a time machine and travels throughout time, forwards and backwards, eventually landing at a point in the future where historical records are told throughout spinning a ring on a tabletop. Guess what? Paul Fries was the voice of the rings. Here's a clip from that movie.
My name is of no consequence. The important thing you should know is that I am the last who remembers how each of us man and woman, made his own decision. Some chose to take refuge in the great caverns and find a new way of life far below the Earth's surface. The rest of us decided to take our chances in the sunlight, small as those chances might be.
In the early 1960s, Walt Disney wanted to build a project at Disneyland called the Hall of Presidents. While that project didn't pan out till years later at Walt Disney World, at Magic Kingdom, there was a project that was built at Disneyland called Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. This was Disney's boyhood hero. Here's a clip of Paul Frees as the narrator for the show, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the governor and the people of the state of Illinois, welcome. You are about to spend a few dramatic moments with Abraham Lincoln.
Next up is a commercial for the Jolly Green Giant. Although Paul didn't play the voice of the giant, he did voice the farmer and the little character named Sprout, who was a green giant in training. Enjoy.
Up in the valley of the Jolly Green Giant lives a guy they call the Little Green Sprout.
A little more light, please, fellas.
He's not very big, about the size of a twig, but that's how Jolly Green Giants start out.
Hi, Sprout. Lots to learn when you're new, isn't there?
I'll say, tonight I'm studying Green Giant cream-style corn. It says here he makes it with his own
His own special corn.
Another fun character that Paul got to do was the voice of Boris on Rocky and Bullwinkle, the animated show.
Well, so let's buy boat ticket and go back home.
Buy ticket and go back home? Natasha, where is your pride, your professional integrity? We steal tickets and go back home.
This character has to be one of my absolute favorites from commercials, the Pillsbury Doughboy, who was voiced by Paul Frees. Here's a clip.
Pillsbury crescents have so much butter flavor, they're hard to forget. Try butter-flavored crescents, fresh and hot.
And Pillsbury says it best.
You know, the holidays are upon us, and Christmas is just around the corner. But Christmas never feels just right without watching some of the Rankin and Bass productions like Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and Jack Frost, just to name a few of their amazing projects. Speaking of projects that Rankin and Bass did, you guessed it, Paul Frees voiced several characters throughout their whole franchise of films. We're going to talk about some of those clips right now. The very first one is Kubla Kraus from Jack Frost that came out in 1979.
I'm Kubla Kraus, I'm king of all the Cossacks. But there are no Cossacks to be king of. There's the rub, there's the rub, there's the rub.
This next Rankin and Bass production is one of my other absolute favorites, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, that came out in 1970, where Paul voiced Burgermeister Mesiterburger, Grimsley, and the Doctor. In this clip, you'll hear all three characters within a very short span, and Paul is the only one in the scene. It's really fun. I hope you enjoy.
As I suspected, you've broken your funny bone.
Oh, what caused me to trip, Grinsley?
This, sir.
Huh? A toy? As I suspected. I hate toys. And toys hate me. Either they are going or I am going. And I am certainly not going, Grinsley. I have a job for you to do. Now take this down.
It's a difficult responsibility that you accept from the #1 lawmaker, me. Have it known throughout the land from sea to sea. There'll be no more toy makers to the king.
The last Rankin and Bass production we're going to speak about today is Frosty the Snowman that came out in 1969. Now, again, Paul voiced a ton of different characters, but we're just going to talk about two of them today, the policeman and Santa Claus. The first clip will be of the policeman and the second one of Santa. I hope you guys enjoy, and right after this, the interview will commence.
All right. Didn't you see that traffic light?
What's a traffic light?
Up there on the lamppost.
What's a lamppost?
Oh, you want a ticket, wise guy?
I'd love one. To the North Pole, please.
Huh?
You've got to excuse him, sir. You see, he just came to life, and he doesn't know much about such things.
Oh, well, okay, if he just came to life. Move along! That silly snowman. Once they come to life, they don't know nothing. Come to life?
Oh, don't cry, Karen. Frosty's not gone for good. You see, he was made out of Christmas snow, and Christmas snow can never disappear completely. Oh, it sometimes goes away for almost a year at a time and takes the form of spring and summer rain. But you can bet your boots that when a good, jolly December wind kisses it, it'll turn into Christmas snow all over again.
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice? Today on the show, we have Fred Fries joining us, the son of Paul Fries, the voice of so many amazing characters, and we will dive into that as well. But Fred is actually an actor as well, and so we're going to talk about his life and career as well. Fred, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I'm glad to be here, Trenton.
Well, it's an absolute honor and pleasure. You know, it was just crazy. We connected via, hey, there's a bunch of people that you're in common with on Facebook, and I clicked on you. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is Paul Fries' son. And it was just, it's wild because as I've done this show, I've gotten such a large friend base that's gotten me to meet people that I would have never dreamed of meeting. And Fred, it's been so amazing to get to chat with you and get to know you on a personal level over the last few weeks.
Yeah, me too, Trenton.
So, Fred, tell us a little bit about your career and how did you get into acting? Would you say that your father was an inspiration for that?
Yeah, from day one, I would think. I've been imitating my dad since I can remember. You know, he was, when I was born, my dad was still doing on-screen acting. He had this idea of becoming a leading man at some point. That never really panned out. Of course, he was in radio for like a dozen years before that, in the 40s and the early 50s. Then he did a lot of on-screen stuff, which the people that follow him know what movies those are. Eventually, he got dissatisfied with that because he really wasn't a leading man type. So eventually, he got into voiceover, pretty much starting with the Rocky and Bullwinkle series. And I used to go with him to sessions and sit there and watch these incredibly talented people do, amazing stuff. And there's some recordings of how they did those sessions for Rocky and Bullwinkle for the Jay Ward cartoons, George of the Jungle and Hoppity Hooper and even Fractured Flickers. A lot of that was ad-libbed, they scripted most of it, but they ad-libbed an awful lot of it, and they used to just break in between and laugh and play practical jokes on each other. And so I always got a sense of, wow, this is fun. It's so amazing. And of course, my dad used to get me in trouble when I was at school because he was on 3 different networks Saturday morning, and I'd just naturally tell my classmates that my dad was on all the channels. He's all on these cartoons, and they said, "You're lying." I said, "No, I'm not lying." But I couldn't prove it until my dad actually had to come down to the school, and he started doing all the voices for the kids. And they stopped accusing me of that after that. And it was an influence growing up with Dad, being the voices that he did, and there's so many of them.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And you mentioned Rocky and Bullwinkle, and that show was actually one that I grew up absolutely loving. In fact, Bullwinkle was one that I began imitating as a kid, and your father played Boris, which I was like, holy cow, what? Like, I was totally blown away when I learned that.
Well, he was Boris and a whole lot of other ones.
Yeah.
In Peabody's history, he was always the guy they went back in time to visit.
That was him every time they went back
every
in time?
So if it was Columbus or Ponce de Leon or Leonardo da Vinci, whoever it was they went back in time to visit, Dad was always the voice of the character they went to visit.
That's awesome.
Reciprocally, he was never on the fairy tales, the fractured fairy tales. I don't think he ever did those.
Just all the historical ones.
Yeah, but all of the Peabody stuff he was. He was one of the Moon Men. He was Peter Peachfuzz.
Oh, wow.
Often he was the narrator. He and Bill Conrad would switch off being the narrator. Of course, he and Bill Conrad go back to radio days. They were best of friends.
Yeah, and your dad has seen a lot of different talent through his life, you know, like you said, stage production, film, radio, voiceover, you know, for all kinds of different formats, which it's so amazing because he had such a talent and he was definitely used in all different areas.
He did everything from character voices to narration to, you know, he did trailers. He especially did a lot of dubbing. There's a lot of movies where it's his voice and not the person you're seeing on the film. A lot of foreign dubbing. He was always the voice of Toshiro Mifune in a lot of those Japanese movies. He's the fighter pilot in Rodan.
Oh, wow.
Who said, I see him, it's Rodan. That was Dad.
Well,
and all of that stuff was uncredited, Trenton. So you never knew. He loved the anonymity.
Yeah.
He loved that. So, you know, he did get credit for things, but most of that stuff was uncredited. So today, the aficionados are all fishing out and digging up all the things that Paul Frees did, and it's amazing when it's all compiled on a list. And I'm amazed myself because Dad never told me everything he did. So I would see it, and if I hear it, I go, oh, yeah, that was Dad.
Well, you spoke of narration and dubbing, and a couple of things that came to mind were his narration for George of the Jungle, the animated series that came out in 1967. And as far as dubbing goes, another film that I absolutely love is Some Like It Hot, and that had Marilyn Monroe in it, along with Tony Curtis. I can't even talk. And I'm blanking out on his co-star that was with him. But he actually did Tony Curtis's voice for the female. He dubbed that, and I thought that was so amazing because it sounded kind of like it could be Tony Curtis, but I was always kind of like, I don't know. It sounds a little bit like it could be someone else, you know, but I never really thought about it too much until researching your father more, and I was surprised to find that he did dub that voice for Tony. Well,
I've heard stories that Tony denied that it was him doing it, but I would know my dad's voice 1,000 miles away, and yeah, it was definitely Dad doing it.
Well, I don't think anyone would know a voice better than their own children, you know?
Well,
for sure.
Not only, it's funny because there are some people out there who can do great imitations of my father.
Yeah.
But I always know that it's an imitation. You know, I could never say, oh, that's Dad. You know, no one can fool me into thinking that's my dad. I mean, I know my dad's voice, and I would also know any voice that he was doing. Some people hear him and go, oh, Paul Frees did a perfect Peter Lorre, a perfect Humphrey Bogart and all that. But when I hear it, there's still my dad in there somewhere. I'd always know it was him.
Yeah.
So I guess when you're just connected in the family, way that you just know, instinctively.
That's Dad.
Yeah, that's Dad.
Absolutely. Well, some other amazing things that he voiced were the Green Giant commercials, where he played Sprout, like the little son of the Green Giant, the Jolly Green Giant, and the Pillsbury Doughboy, which absolutely loved the Pillsbury Doughboy as a kid. And this one I wasn't as sure about, Fred. Did he actually voice Toucan Sam for a while for Fruit Loops?
Yeah, that was his Ronald Comin impression.
That's super awesome. Your father has played so many legendary characters that have become such staples and icons for the American people and people around the world, actually. And it's just fascinating to see as I dive more into his life. It's so amazing to see the wonderful things he's done. Like Tom and Jerry, I realized he played the voice of Jerry for a while as well, one of the many voices of Jerry. And I thought that was super fantastic because growing up, that was one of my absolute favorite characters.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's really heartwarming how people, even today, are still, big fans of his. It's really great.
And sometimes you're a fan of his and you don't even realize it because you dive into things like the Incredible Mr. Limpet that starred Don Knotts, and your father was Krusty the Krab, and that came out in 1964. Absolutely love that movie. It's a super funny movie where a guy, Don Knotts' character, wishes he could be a fish, and he becomes one, and he meets Krusty the Krab, which is voiced by Paul Frees. And I never realized that, but it's amazing because you start thinking about it once you hear the name, and you go, "Oh my gosh, that's totally Paul." So,
yeah, that particular voice is something that he would just do around the house. He just all that kind of thing. And when you mentioned the Green Giant, he was also the farmer.
Oh, okay.
The old man.
Yeah.
Well, he'd say, "Hey, Sprout," So he wasn't the Green Giant, but he was the farmer.
Yeah.
In that,
yeah.
he was also the raid bugs.
Oh, the raid bugs. That's awesome. Those
Yeah,
are
the
such
original
classics.
raid bugs that would scream "raid," and that is something he came home with his hand around his throat, which was very common for my dad to have his hand around his throat because it was always sore after 10 straight hours of doing stuff like that and working all.
I bet. Well, your father did such a variation of voices, and some are very obviously him, and some are like, you've got to be kidding me. Like I've watched the old Snow Queen that came out in 1957, and I couldn't believe it. My dad introduced me to all kinds of stuff that just aren't necessarily mainstream, and he played several characters on that show, but especially kind of the narrator old man character called Old Dreamy on the Snow Queen, and that was a film I grew up loving, but it's not necessarily one a lot of people know. But it's crazy to look back at these and go, holy cow, he actually voiced these characters I grew up loving. So.
Yeah, I would suggest if anyone wants to see a very comprehensive credit list for my dad, to purchase Ben Omart's biography of my dad called "Welcome, Foolish Mortals."
Absolutely, I was sorry. Go ahead.
Two. Make sure it's the second edition, because that has a whole lot of additional interview stuff on there and material that wasn't in the first book.
Now, is that the one? I thought I was going to talk about that too. Welcome, Foolish Mortals. I had it revised edition, the life and voices of Paul Frees. Is it the revised one for the second edition, or does it say specifically second edition?
I'm not sure, Trenton. I mean, if it says revised, but it should say second edition, whether it says revised or not.
Okay.
That's the one I definitely recommend, because Ben Omart was after me to help, talk about it, and it took months of questions and answers on email, and by the time he got to the second edition, I don't know if you know this, Trenton, but my dad was married over 6 times.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, and my mom was number 3 on the list, and obviously some of the wives were not able to say anything because they're gone, but on the second edition, his 5th wife, Jerry, she actually got in touch with Ben and was able to give all kinds of added information that wasn't in the first book.
Okay.
So that's why I recommend it, because he's got all that additional stuff in there. And all the things that I told him, some of the stuff was updated and revised, so definitely. And it's got an unbelievable credit list at the end of the book.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I definitely wanted to dive into that, and I'm glad you brought it up. Again, the book is called Welcome, Foolish Mortals, The Life and Voices of Paul Frees. Look for the second edition, as it has more updated information. It's just amazing, just the stuff that I skimmed on the surface, and I'm sure it really is the surface, Fred, because your father did such an in-depth list of things. Another thing he did, which is probably one of his most iconic and best known, is the ghost host from the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland and now Disney World, as they brought that attraction there years later. And other things he's done that were just mind-blowing were he played a barnyard horse from Mary Poppins in the animated scenes, and he was in Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July 1979 as Winterbolt, Jack Frost, and a couple of other characters. But he's just played a character in so many things that have touched my life. My wife and I actually went to the Gaylord Resort in Texas for Christmas last year, and they do a thing called Ice, where they have ice sculptures of all characters from different shows and stuff, and they actually did it from... I'm blanking on the show. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and they had Burgermeister Mesiterburger and, all of the different scenes carved out in ice. And I didn't realize that show came out in the 70s anyway, but your father played Burgermeister Mesiterburger, and I was like, holy cow. No wonder that voice sounded so familiar as a kid.
Yeah. He was very fond of doing work for Rankin Bass.
Okay.
they were one of the last few people that he would actually fly down from Tiburon to do work for. Because Dad retreated up to Tiburon, which, if people don't know, is just north of San Francisco.
Okay.
Near Sausalito. That was his retreat home, and it eventually became his permanent residence. And he wouldn't travel very much from there, but he would fly down to Los Angeles just to do Rankin Bass specials,
which were really amazing shows. They really did some awesome projects, and I'm so glad that he was able to be a part of that as well. And I'm trying to think, one of the other things that he did that really kind of shocked me was he actually played on the Fantastic Four show from 1967 and played the Thing, Ben Grimm. And I was like, wow, that is so cool, because your father's done everything from the most beloved cartoons and commercials from all times to the best superheroes of all time, and even amazing characters like Ludwig von Drake, who did a lot of the sing-along song Disney videos for those who grew up in the 80s like I did in the 90s. The sing-along songs also had Ludwig von Drake on them a lot of times, and Disney's World of Color and everything had Ludwig explaining the color fractions of the light, and when color TVs first started hitting the market. And so your father was really a man who had not just an iconic voice, but he had a chance to be on some of the forefronts of some of the most amazing technology and experiences in history.
Yeah, well, Ludwig van Drake is one of my favorite characters that he's ever done in his life. And I used to imitate that all the time with my father. We used to joke together like that. At one time, Trenton, when I was about 12 years old, I was at Disney with him, and they were considering doing Ludwig von Drake Jr.
Oh, really?
As a character. They never did do it, unfortunately, but at the time my dad was having me imitate him.
Yeah.
For the producers, and everyone had a good time with that. We were both doing Ludwig von Drake together. So,
they should have done the Junior, and they should still do it. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, well, it would have been fun to do, but I guess they just decided not to do that. But it was a good idea.
Absolutely. Well, one of the other things I wanted to talk about before we start talking a little bit more about you, Fred, is your father played KARR on Knight Rider, and I recently had William Daniels on the show, who actually played Kit. Knight Rider has always been a show that really meant a lot to me, and your father's voice is just super iconic and super booming and just awe-inspiring, actually. And so for him to be able to play KARR, did you ever watch those episodes, where the episode he played KARR on, or?
Yeah, I've seen them. I wasn't a big Knight Rider watcher. I mean, I did watch it.
Yeah.
I mostly, I tuned in to hear my dad do KARR. I know Peter Cullen did it mostly.
Yeah, in the beginning he did it. Yeah.
Actually, Dad did. I think it was just one or two episodes where the two actually fought each other.
Yeah, where KARR and Kit fought. Yeah.
Yeah, Kit versus KARR or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit older by the time that came out, so I wasn't really watching the show that much. There was a lot of stuff that he did that I didn't necessarily tune into.
Yeah.
Later, because there was so much of it.
Yeah. No kidding.
If Dad just popped up on TV, there's Dad. You kind of get, and I would say jaded, but you just get used to it after a while.
Yeah, because your dad did so much, and it's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. I don't know how your dad had time to do anything else. He worked so much,
Well, he didn't do much else. I mean, he full-time work, not much time for anything else. But on the weekends, he did not work.
Okay.
Because that's when we'd spend time, doing family stuff. And he didn't bring his work home with him ever. And Dad was someone who also never practiced. He never trained. He never took classes. He was a natural-born performer.
Wow.
And the only one in the family. He had 3 older siblings, and no one in the family showed that kind of ability.
Yeah.
My family were actually very kind of common people with very common jobs. And they even said, as a child, my dad was unique. And he would get up on a table, and he would start singing, and he'd start doing, when he was 9 or 10 years old, and he got into vaudeville by the time he was 15.
Oh, that's awesome,
and
vaudeville.
Just was driven to perform, and he never had any training. I don't know where he got it from. Nobody knows where he got it from. The family was very, they were very common people with ordinary jobs, and he was one of a kind.
Absolutely. Well, he's a very unique man, and it's been awesome to get to talk with you about him some. So tell us a little bit, Fred, about your career and what kind of things have you done besides voicing as the narrator for the book, Welcome Foolish Mortals, The Life and Voices of Paul Frees. What are some other things that you've been a part of in the voiceover world yourself?
Well, thanks for mentioning that book. It's an audio book that I did, Welcome Foolish Mortals. I also did the audio book Ben Omart wrote about Mel Blanc, the biography for him, and that was fabulous as well, because Mel was, as you know, Mel was something else. And but I didn't really get into doing voice work until after my father passed away. I was actually just doing other things. Then when he passed away, I was kind of numb for several years. I mean, it was devastating.
I understand.
To lose my dad.
Yeah.
Being his only son. And of course, I have a sister, my half sister Sabrina. So he actually has two offspring. Most people don't realize. A lot of people go, "Oh my God, I didn't know Paul Frees had a son." Well, they really didn't know that he had a daughter too.
Yeah.
So I don't think either of us took it very well when he passed away, because he was larger than life.
Yeah.
And to lose that life it took years for me to just get my bearings back. So. It wasn't really until the early 90s that I contacted his best friend and agent, Charlie Stern, who was a premier agent in Los Angeles. And I said, I'd like to do voice work too, And I started studying with my mother, who was a voice coach for 25 years. And I made my demo, and I went to Charles, and next thing I know, I was on a plane to Chicago doing voice tests for the Pillsbury Doughboy, which I didn't eventually get the job, but I did about 8 months' worth of paid tests.
Oh, wow.
Like animatics and stuff like that, and then that's how I got into AFTRA, which was separate from SAG at the time. And the big thing that I got to do back then was, for the Cartoon Network, I was the voice of Morocco Mole, which Dad was on the Secret Squirrel Show.
That's awesome.
Many years. And they needed someone to be a voice match, and I worked for the Cartoon Network for a couple years doing Morocco Mole. So that was a real homage to my dad, and it felt really good doing that, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, how appropriate to be continuing on his legacy like that, and to be building your own legacy through that continued family relationship. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. It was really great, because from the one audition, I got 2 years worth of work. So anytime it was great. Anytime they needed, the voice, they would just, Charles would call and say, "You got a job," and I'd just go in and do it. And so that was really great. So sometimes you don't have to keep auditioning.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do. They make you come back and audition again and again. But in this case, it was like a steady thing. So it was real nice. I was able to do my dad's voice for Disneyland and Disney World when they were doing the Haunted Mansion anniversary. And in the kiosks, they had CDs that people could make with the soundtracks. So I was the voice of the ghost host in those machines, giving you instructions on how to press the button, how to make the CD, and also as one of the Pirates of the Caribbean, which you didn't mention. Dad was all the pirates, or most of the pirates in the Pirates Ride at Disneyland. He's several voices in Disneyland and Disney World, besides the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, and you're right. He was in the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and I didn't talk about that. I meant to, but I didn't talk about it. But like your dad has done so much, it's almost impossible to remember it all.
Well, not only that, but it would take another hour of your time, Trenton, and your show to even scratch the surface of what he did.
Absolutely.
So lately, in the past 10 years or so, I've been busy doing audiobooks, and also I'm working in association with Bear Manor Media, which is the publishing company for the books that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And we've been producing our own material, which I love the creativity of doing my own stuff. It's nice to get a script and do what someone else wants you to do, and I'm still doing that, but I like creating my own material. And we're doing comedy albums. A lot of it is songs, a lot of singing, sketch comedy. It could be anything from ringtones. I've done Fred Fries as Paul Fries ringtones. So I've actually done the Ghost Host, Ludwig, Boris Badenoff, things like that as ringtones.
That's awesome.
And there's all kinds of stuff, and the creativity just never stops. So that's something that I've been doing.
Well, could we get a sample of you as the Ghost Host?
That's hard to do, because even with Dad, they put a little echo on it, you know?
Yeah.
I have to lower the voice. When hinges creak in doorless chambers and ghosts fly. I can't remember the script, so it's something like that.
That's awesome. It is. I know they do a little bit of adjustment to the sound, the vocalization, but that was pretty legit. Like, you sound so much like your dad. It's ridiculous.
Well, now I have to sound like Corey Burton instead of sound like my dad. But even Corey does a lot of manipulation to get the sound, and of course Corey doesn't fool me. I know it's not my dad, but it's fun doing stuff like that. You know, some people do a great Paul Fries just talking normally, because my father never called me Fred. You might find this interesting. He never called me, sometimes he'd call me son, but hardly. It was usually Frederick. It was just Frederick. Or, the deep voice and the things like this. And Paul would explain the philosophy of the world, and he always had this thing going, and Dad was always on, pretty much all the time. And the thing that I loved doing the most was calling him and doing a voice on the phone that he didn't recognize, because he never really, I think parents always think of their children as babies. They never really recognize that you've grown up.
Yeah.
And I know my dad was kind of like that with me, that he never really saw me as a grown-up. So I called him, and he'd answer the phone. My father never said hello. He'd always say, yes. That's how my dad answered the phone. He'd go, yes. And I'd say, Paul! And he'd say, who is this? I said, Paul, don't you recognize me? And he'd go, no, who is this? I'd say, it's your son. My son? And I would laugh for about 10 minutes. I'd fool him every time. So it was fun doing that, fooling the voice master.
Yeah.
So those are the things I miss the most, really, is having to do things like that with my dad. And, and so when I do his voice and I hear it come out of me, because, it's not just the voice. I'm kind of physically like my dad. I've got his nose, I've got his hands.
Yeah.
People look at me and they go, "My God, you look just like your father." I can't help that. Can't help sounding like him either. It's just there. So, and the other thing that I like to do is coach. The other thing I'm always looking for new students to coach, specifically to do character voices.
How can people reach you if they would be interested in having you be their coach, Fred?
Through my website, fredfries.com.
Okay.
Or voicepeddler.com. It's the same destination, but Fred Fries with an S, if you know how to spell my name. And contact me that way, because I don't teach commercial reads or narration, or certainly I don't teach marketing, because there's a lot of people out there that can do that better than I do. But I like to coach character voices and help people explore, what they're capable of doing that they're not aware of, and also produce their animation demo. And that's what I like to do, which is great because on your show, Trenton, you specifically go for the people that do the voices behind the characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like to get those people, get new people for you by training them to get those voices out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and my show kind of helps bring people to those who do coach and teach, because some people that listen to the show may grow up and just love cartoons, and some may be actively seeking to become voice actors. And so information like that for the fact that you teach character voices is super stellar for people on my show who are looking to become an actor that specializes in that field.
Well, I'd be happy to have them come my way. And I'm also affordable, Trenton, because I don't subscribe to this idea that you have to pay a lot to get ultimate quality in terms of coaching or teaching or almost anything else, because there's a lot of people out there that are willing to charge a lot of money because they're in business.
Yeah.
And it puts people out of range to get the training they need because it's unaffordable. I don't know how you can pay $150 an hour if you need 20 hours of training.
Yeah.
Where are you going to come up with that kind of money? I don't think it's fair, and I don't charge that. And I'm willing to negotiate with people based on their need. But I will also be brutally honest. If I think that someone just isn't right for this, I'm going to have to tell them that, because I always come from a place of encouragement.
Yeah.
But you can't give people false hope. It's not right. There's a lot of people who don't understand that they're not really cut out for it, because there's a lot involved in it. There's a lot of commitment and a raw talent that, I love to mold people. If they have it and bring it out of them. And there's so much out there. There's so much talent that hasn't been touched. But some people are, maybe better off doing an audiobook.
Yeah.
Or doing a e-learning or something, more, less challenging than trying to do voice acting, because you do have to have some acting experience. There's a lot to it, but I say you start with commitment, with a passion. If you have those things and you have a few kernels of talent, there's something there that can be brought out. And I can help you make an animation demo, a competitive demo, without you spending an arm and a leg, because I know what it's like, and people are struggling when it comes to the money.
Yeah, especially in today's economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing I forgot to mention that I did want to talk about was the talking rings that your father played on the Time Machine, the original movie that came out, not the remake that was... We won't talk about it, but it was one of my favorite movies growing up, and I had no recollection that it was your father's voice until researching it and finding out that it was him. I was like, that's absolutely Paul. And I went, holy cow, like that was one of my absolute favorite movies growing up. My dad raised me on all the classics from all different eras, and that was just so amazing to realize he did that.
There was a lot of George Pal movies that he did. I can't remember them offhand, but he did a lot of stuff with George Pal. And I love that. I love that too in the Time Machine. My name is of no consequence.
Absolutely.
and literally, his name was of no consequence because he never got any credit for things like that.
Yeah, he just did them because he loved it.
Well, he loved it, and he loved the anonymity. He loved that people heard the voice, recognized it, and didn't know who it was.
Well, I wanted to ask you, what is your fondest memory of your father?
For me, the fondest memories, because my dad and my mother were divorced when I was 6 years old. So I didn't see my dad during the week. I lived with my mother. So every time I was with my dad was the fondest memory of my dad. Every time I was with him, I loved being with my dad, partially because he was, the great Paul Frees, but he was also a great dad. And I always look forward to being with him. I loved being with him, and all the times we had together, I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's fantastic. I mean, to hear that every moment you were with him was the most precious, that's super epic. I mean, that's a huge legacy for him and for you, I think, so.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of legacies, what would you say the legacy is that you want to leave behind, Fred?
One of inspiration, hopefully, and encouragement to others. I like to see other people succeed, especially in the voiceover business. So it's every time someone succeeds in the business, I think of my dad. I love to hear new voices, and success stories are always encouraging to me. Someone has to carry on. You know, the old guard is going now, and even the middle guard are starting to retire, or semi-retire now. So we need the up-and-comers to keep going. And if anything that my father has done, or anything that I have done, or any of the rest of us have done, is an encouragement and inspiration, that's the legacy I'd like to see.
I think that's fantastic. You know, wanting to be leaving a legacy that creates a legacy is pretty epic, because you're wanting to be something that is an inspiration and a hope to other people, like the old guard voiceover artists have been. And I think that you can't ask for something more perfect than that, because it's a legacy that will automatically be forever, because you're wanting to help train up and inspire the next generation, which is super fantastic, Fred.
And also to make sure that the old guard doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah,
there's
that
some
too.
people who you mentioned their names, and the new people go, I don't recognize that name.
Yeah.
I don't know who that was. That's something that shouldn't happen. People should remember who Mel Blanc was by name. Hopefully they'll remember who Paul Frees was by name, although a lot of people still don't know the name Paul Frees as well as people in the business.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge part of my show as well, Fred. Not to just do people that are currently living that people know and that are in the current daily thought process, but to talk about actors like Paul Frees, the Ghost Host, and Ludwig von Drake, and all these other amazing characters that people grow up still loving to this day, but do they really know the man behind the voice, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're doing a great thing there, Trenton.
I really appreciate it, Fred. That means a lot coming from you. You know, I know you have an up-and-coming show, and I wanted to just share a little bit with my audience about what you have coming in the days ahead.
Well, it's called the Voice Peddler Interviews, and it's only on YouTube. I was having trouble with calling myself a voice actor. Actually, Trenton, I couldn't come up with a name that was original. You know, everybody calls themselves a voice actor.
Yeah.
Because in these days, you have to come up with some new brand, right? You have to come up with something unique, because everyone's calling themselves either a voice actor or a voice talent or a voiceover artist. You know, it's on their website, it's on their business cards. And I came up with the word peddler. I peddle voices.
I love it.
So my website is Fred Frees Voice Peddler, and the interview show is called the Voice Peddler Interviews. And I'm carrying on the legacy of the Voice Peddler Productions, and we're planning to put out all kinds of fun things for people, because there's so much challenge in the world. You know, there's no shortage of bad news, right, Trenton?
Absolutely.
So, I figured, you know, if I can bring a little levity, a little lightheartedness, a little inspiration, then I'm a happy camper.
Well, Fred, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. Would you please give us a closeout today as the Ghost Host?
You've been listening to Who Did That Voice with your host, Trenton Larkin. This has been Fred Frees on Who Did That Voice? And who did that voice? You may never know, but I did it my way.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed this combined episode and interview with Fred Frees and about Paul Frees. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. You know, a question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Halloween for our next special guest, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.